Night Football action from last night. And my next guest is here to add his insight and analysis. He's been a long time guest on my previous shows. He's making his all access football debut here, and we thank him so much for taking some time to join us. A longtime staple at Pro Football Talk, by the way. He is Josh Alper, and he joins us right now. Good morning, Josh. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing good. I saw you are now, is it 18 years at ProFootballTalk.com?
It's fun. It is. It's been a wild ride. It was independent and now NBC and a lot of changes in the football landscape over that time. But yeah, I've been working with Mike and the crew over there for a very long time now.
That's outstanding, man. I love to see it too, because I remember when it was in its infancy and it was an independent site and you guys just blew it out of the water, and you've been there to watch it all grow. And we appreciate you taking some time here today to enlighten us. And before the commercial break, I was talking about Tom Brady and the competitive advantage that he has. Do you not see an issue with this situation?
I see a big issue with it. And I think it's something that we've pointed out, multiple times over the last couple of years since he started the Fox job, that it really seems to be something that other teams would have a bigger interest in seeing go away. And I don't know if it's because the Raiders aren't seen as a threat to, or haven't been a threat to other teams, or that, there's some question about the level of his involvement in the day-to-day with the Raiders versus this being sort of a passive investment. But you see him in the box with Mark Davis at a game. They're talking about him on the phone with Chip Kelly, and if they've loosened the rules and in terms of the pre-game production meetings and things like that, it is something that screams a conflict of interest. But it doesn't seem to be anything that the NFL wants to get really involved in. And I think perhaps that's because they want Tom Brady to be as involved in the league as he can be because of who he is and what he's accomplished.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Let's talk about that Chargers 20-9 victory over the Raiders. And you're right. If the Raiders were sitting here 2-0, you might hear a little bit noise about this situation. But, the quarterback situation is obviously an issue. We saw the tale of two Genos from week 1 to week 2, 3 interceptions there. Let's get your opinion, though, on these rookies, because there was a lot of expectations coming from Ashton Jeanty being the number 6 pick. 11 carries, 43 yards, 72 rushing yards in the past 2 games. You go back to that Penn State game, he had his tires stuck in mud, couldn't really get it going. Are you concerned about Ashton Jeanty as he makes the transition from running through the MAC to trying to be a stud at the National Football League?
I think it's 2 games, and I think we're so accustomed to the instant gratification. I think it's going to take time. It's a new offense, a new quarterback, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a lot of changes on that team, in terms of players in new spots, the offensive line gelling. I think it's going to take time, but I think it's also, it is a reminder of how different the college game is to the professional game. And, we saw Bijan Robinson took time to get going. There are other really talented backs that didn't, knock it out of the park day one. Now, if we get to November and he's still running for 40, 45 yards a game, and the offense is still reliant on Geno Smith, who's the boom and bust quarterback he's always been, and you can't expect him to be any better or worse than he is. So it has to step up at some point. But I wouldn't be pressing any panic buttons right now, especially with Pete Carroll, who's a guy who's going to remain devoted to the run game. He's not going to just all of a sudden stop trying to run the football.
Unless it's the Super Bowl and they need a yard on the goal line. Josh Alper here on the All Access Football Show, joining us from Pro Football Talk. And Amarian Hampton, he had the fumble, not so good. But if Jeanty could pan out, they do have some building blocks there in Las Vegas with Brock Bowers, 5 catches, 38 yards. Khalil Mack leaving that game with an elbow injury. I know you guys will have an update over at ProFootballTalk.com throughout the week on that. Let's shift gears over to Tampa Bay and Houston, where, another rookie has made an impact. Emeka Ibuka, you saw him score another touchdown, stepping in for Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield pulling out the late game heroics. What do you make of this Buccaneers team who has won the NFC South the last 4 years and seems to be just moving and grooving despite being a little bit banged up. Godwin's down, Wirfs is down. You saw them lose their other offensive tackle, but Mayfield just continues to deliver.
Yeah, that was a really remarkable final drive there, and with 2 weeks in a row for Baker to do that, and now we're into the third season of him doing this in Tampa, and it's almost unthinkable that there was a real question about whether he'd ever be a starting quarterback in the NFL again. Really, 2021, 2022, that things got so dark for him, in Cleveland, and then that weird Carolina tenure, and it sort of felt like he was cycling out of the league, and that he wasn't going to be able to do it. And you watch him play, and he's not the most physically talented guy. He's certainly not the biggest guy, but he's got whatever that thing that you can't teach, and the thing that you can't find in quarterbacks that have more physical talent than he does, and this just drive and desire and relentlessness that for any NFL team you'd love to have it, and for a team like the Bucs that has really done a super job of surrounding him with talent and investing in the offensive line and investing in spots that are the key spots around the field, that it feels like they could go even higher this year than winning the division and maybe winning one playoff game. The injuries are concerning. Kalijah Cansey going down last night, a pectoral injury that tends to not work out well in terms of getting a guy back. But yeah, if they get Chris Godwin back and Tristan Wirfs back, and they can avoid those other big injuries, I think that offense can be as good as any in the NFC, quite honestly. And when you have a quarterback who, whatever the situation is going to say, we can still win this game, that's a pretty big thing to have when you actually believe it.
Yeah, Baker is just a gamer. We saw that at Oklahoma, and it's the it factor. What is it? I mean, he's got the intangibles that Baker Mayfield, and of course, Todd Bowles' defense is always going to be prepared. You saw 7 different defenders with the quarterback pressure there last night. So I totally expect Tampa Bay to be in heavy contention to emerge from the NFC. Now, there's injuries popping up all over the league. I know one you've really been all over is this Joe Burrow injury. Cincinnati now turning to Jake Browning. But I know that they've worked out several quarterbacks, so they could be looking to bring somebody in. Tell us about those guys.
Yeah, well, they're signing Sean Clifford and Mike White to the practice squad, so they are really adding some depth. They had Brett Rippon there already. The free agent market is not long on players who are going to upgrade you from Jake Browning, especially since he's started games in Zach Taylor's offense in the past. And as we saw on Sunday, Zach Taylor can scheme up some pretty good stuff there when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins catching passes. That there's a lot you can do without Joe Burrow. I think ultimately when you're scheming everything up, the talent wins out, and you'd rather have Joe Burrow, but I think they can win games with Jake Browning if their defense keeps playing the way it has for the first 2 weeks. It wasn't great against Jacksonville, but it was good enough. It was certainly good enough in week 1 against Cleveland when the offense was really misfiring. I do wonder, long term, if the turnover issues for Browning are going to hold them back. But if you're the Bengals, can you really afford to go trade for Kirk Cousins? And is Kirk Cousins going to do a better job than Jake Browning will do? I don't see that the Giants are in any hurry to trade Jameis Winston. These options are all, you're sorting through the remainder bin. And to go back to what we were just talking about, every now and again you pull out a Baker Mayfield, but most of the time these guys are where they're at in their careers for a pretty good reason. And so, you'll have Clifford and White and Rippon and guys who have played in the NFL and have had, varying amounts of success when they've been pushed into situations. If Browning were to go down, I think you're in a real trouble spot for the Bengals. And I think that the key right now is to make sure that Al Golden's defense is as good as it possibly can be, because you're going to probably have to win games in a little bit different way than just saying that Joe Burrow let it rip and we'll take what happens.
Yeah, Al Golden, a Jersey guy. Mike White, I think he did work out with San Francisco last week, so that's interesting that the Bengals jumped on him. And you mentioned Kirk Cousins. I'm just curious, do you think there's any chance that he could land in San Francisco? Kirk Cousins, that is.
I would think you need to hear that Brock Purdy is going to be out for a lot longer than it currently looks like. I think if San Francisco had the injury that Cincinnati had, I think there would be a lot of buzz about that because of Kyle Shanahan's history with Kirk Cousins and Kirk Cousins' history and that Shanahan style of an offense and all of those things. There would be a lot to like about that connection, but Kirk Cousins wasn't any better than Mac Jones last season. Just to be
True,
as blunt about it as we possibly can be. And the idea that he's probably a little bit healthier than he was last year is something to think about. But what are you going to have to give up for him? What is that going to mean for your bottom line? If you're the 49ers and you believe in Robert Saleh's defensive acumen and you have Christian McCaffrey and you're going to get hopefully some of these receivers back, George Kittle back, can you devise an offense that Mac Jones can run effectively? And I think Kyle Shanahan would believe in himself on that front. I would tend to as well. And again, I think they hope Purdy's back in a week or two. But if it looks like if that changes, I think that Kirk Cousins would absolutely be on the table.
Yeah, Mac Jones looking pretty good there, filling in. We'll see if he can sustain that. All right, Josh Alper, Pro Football Talk, Rick Serritella, All Access Football Daily Show here, breaking it up, chopping it down. I got to get your opinion now on Danny Dimes all of a sudden because the Colts, like I'm here in New Jersey. I've watched every game of Daniel Jones' career. We've never seen him play like this in 5 years. And I caught his interview on the Pat McAfee show where he was talking about what he learned in Minnesota. And I don't think he meant it as a slight to New York, but he was talking about just the level of preparation and just the intensity of preparation and going over every scenario possible for the upcoming game. He said he learned more in Minnesota, it sounded like, than any pit stop in his career. And now doing big things. Shane Steichen, another great offensive mind. Are you buying or selling what these Colts are doing?
Right now, I'm buying it more that Daniel Jones would have taken what happened at the Giants last year. That time in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell is as good as it gets in terms of working with quarterbacks. He got Sam Darnold paid. We'll see if Carson Wentz is going to start this week. That would be probably the biggest reclamation project of all. But I bet he'll come up. He made Josh Dobbs look like an NFL starter for a few weeks there a couple of years ago. I think that being around that, and I agree, I don't think it's a slight on Brian Daboll. They went to the playoffs together, and Daboll put tons of faith in Daniel Jones over the years. But I think that stepping back and seeing other people run an offense, and I think that to go all the way back, I think the Giants probably pulled Eli Manning too early in favor of Daniel Jones way back when, because he could have benefited, like so many other young quarterbacks, from watching a real pro, even one at the end of his career and wasn't that good of a player anymore, how they prepare, how they go through the week, watching and listening to the play calls and seeing how that progresses and reading that. And I think that all helps. I think that Jonathan Taylor looking as healthy as he's looked for the first 2 weeks has helped a great deal in Indianapolis. And Steichen is been in his bag in terms of calling plays that Daniel Jones likes. However, I'll say all of that if not for a leverage penalty at the end of that game against Denver, that's a 1-1 Colts team that beat a bad Dolphins team in week 1. And I don't think the level of discourse would be exactly the same about Daniel Jones is back and everything else. Now you're a 2-0 Colts team. The Texans are 0-2. No one else in that division looks particularly threatening in terms of the long haul. Jacksonville's up and down, and Tennessee is clearly at the start of building something with Cam Ward. But the opportunity's there, and I think that the key is going to be to keep, as long as you can keep him from trying to do too much. That was always the thing that killed him with the Giants, was always, that extra little bit, trying to get that extra yard. He wound up getting hurt, with some of the running and things like that. And I think Shane Steichen's been very good about that. And I think the Anthony Richardson experience has probably helped the Colts in terms of understanding that you don't want to put too much on your quarterback's plate all at once, because it doesn't always work out. And Jones is a lot more experienced than Richardson. And perhaps Richardson can get a similar growth experience from now finally having a chance to sit and watch a different quarterback prepare. I still need to see more to believe it. There were those spurts with the Giants where Daniel Jones looked great. But if 3-4 weeks from now it's continued, I think you're looking at a real thing there in Indianapolis.
Some very, very fair points that you make there, especially, the Giants were so quick to run Eli out of town. And now, look, they haven't stopped trying to find a replacement. But I heard Jordan Love talking a couple weeks ago recently about how much he learned and how grateful he was to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. And we all know Rodgers wasn't teaching him anything, but just from the process of osmosis, he was able to learn, like you said, how to prepare, how to be a pro, how to study and break down film. So some very good insight here, Josh. We're up against it. We appreciate you checking in on the All Access Football Daily Show. Give the listening audience at home a little sneak peek of what you got on tap, what you're working on over at Pro Football Talk.
Well, I mean, we're working every day to bring you everything, every little bit of every little corner of the league. We're definitely keeping an eye on all of these injuries from last night. The Khalil Mack one did not look good, and on the tape, arms aren't supposed to move in that direction. So I think the Chargers are going to have that to deal with. But we'll have that, and what do we have coming? What does the NFL have coming? We sit there and we're ready for all of it. So keep banging away at our site, and we're there for you 24/7.
Hey, he's not lying, folks. He's on standby, ready to go. That Josh Alper, and we thank him so much. Josh, appreciate the time, man. This was awesome stuff.
My pleasure. Have a good